Good morning, everybody. You can take a seat wherever you are. Could we thank the band one more time? Because that was exceptional. Thank you. Well, my name is Hank, and I am so glad to be here. You kind of have no idea how fun this is for me that I get to do this. So I'm just really, really grateful to be here with you today. I have to begin by first off thanking Derek and Laurel for having me and for being here and being present. I've known them for, I think, 16 years, and I can't tell you how lucky you are to have Derek and Laurel as your pastors. The most kind, faithful, amazing, like when you meet, I work in the entertainment business, so I meet a lot of people who are not good people. They're really good people. I can tell you that from I know the full range of experience, and I have a full spectrum of good people and not good people. And I'm telling you, these are some of the most amazing people on the planet. So guys, I'm so grateful to be here and to get to be a part of this. So thank you. I was texting my wife when Derek was talking about me. You guys might have seen me on my phone. I married my wife. We just finished our 13th year anniversary, which is very exciting. Which means that 14 years ago, we were on the beach in Hermosa Beach, and I was like, hey, what if we did this thing called 30 for 30, or 30 by 30, where for 30 days, there was 30 things happening. So if you are a part of a community or church and you want to get connected, there's literally something every day. There's no excuse. She looks at me, and I'm like thinking, this is awesome. I'm like writing this in a notebook, and she's like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. So the fact that now 14 years later, somewhere in the world, there's still 30 by 30s or 30 for 30s happening. I was getting emails from South Africa and Italy and all these people being like, dude, we're doing this 30 for 30 thing where our church does something every day. So I was just texting my wife hey, it wasn't the worst idea ever. So it made me, you just gave me a one-up today. I got a point today with my wife. Well, I want to introduce myself, and then I have some thoughts I'd love to share with you today. The first thing I want you to know is that I grew up in a state-certified foster home in Dayton, Ohio. My parents, my biological parents, my mom and my dad, they had 3 kids. I'm the middle of those 3. I have an older sister and a younger brother, 2 bio siblings. And my mom sat us down when we were 7, and she said, hey, we're going to be foster parents. She said, God put me on earth to be a mother. And then my dad chimed in, and he was like, God put me on earth to make her happy, so this is what we're doing as a family. So we started that, and we were homeschooled. Any homeschoolers in the house? Anybody homeschool? All right, we know. I saw a hand like this. Okay, I got you. I was homeschooled, so that meant I was literally a 7-year-old foster parent I could change a diaper the way a soldier would field dress a rifle. You know what I mean? I was like, I got this. We started fostering and had no idea. My mom had one rule with the foster care system, which is I'm not your first call, I'm your last. So when you have a kid you can't place, you call us. So every single one of the kids that came to us had special needs. Every single one of the kids that came to us, they either had 24-hour nurse care, or they had feeding tubes, or they had oxygen. That was my 7 to 14. And what we realized is that impermanence is the worst thing you could possibly give to a child. So no matter how stable you can create a season for a child, that impermanence, that chaos, still follows them and sets them back. So after seeing 36 kids leave our home, 36 kids come into our home abused, hurt, injured, sick, fetal alcohol syndrome, kids whose mothers used crack while they were pregnant. The amount of darkness is the only way to describe it that had touched these kids were in my living room. So when my friends who went to high school or my friends who went to school were like, oh, you're homeschooled, you're just so sheltered, I thought to myself, man, I got the darkness of the whole world in my living room. I don't think I'm the one that's sheltered. And it's interesting because my breakfast table was probably the most unique breakfast table in the whole county. I would come down, and because foster care is such an impermanent thing, we could have a kid for 2 weeks, we could have a kid for 2 months, or they could stay for 2.5, 3 years. But we never knew. The foster system just did what it did. It was the 80s, so there was no internet. It was literally rubber stamping paper. So you'd come down for breakfast and be like a new person at the breakfast table. You'd be like, what's up, man? What's your thing? You're trying to figure out who this person is. Or it's a baby, and my mom is literally like, hey, can you feed this child? I'm like, yeah, what's this baby's name? You don't have any idea. And then there would be some days where there'd be empty seats because it got taken away from us. So what I find amazing about growing up like that is I don't think until I just turned 40 years old, I don't think until I got older that you realize that sometimes as we go through life, darkness puts its hands on us. Maybe you're here and like somewhere along your way or somewhere along your journey, you got to see darkness, or maybe darkness even touched your life. And as you get older, you start to realize you're either running away from that or you're reacting to it. And as you get older, you're like, oh, that's why I do all that. Anybody ever have that moment? You have that moment where you're literally like, oh my gosh. I live in LA, so if you're not in therapy, you're not alive, right? Like you pay your therapist before you pay your rent. Do you get what I'm saying? And like you're an overachiever if you got like 3 therapists. Like I have friends that have multiple therapists and a life coach. And I think in those therapy moments or in those moments, you start to realize, man, that's really like a part of my life. And my guess is that some of us here, you've had darkness hit your family or darkness touch your life at some point. And if you're fortunate enough to not be able to identify that, my guess is you can spot darkness in the world around us. Men, anybody ever have that feeling that the world right now, culture, society right now, and maybe it's the media's portrayal or maybe it's really what's happening. You ever on a skateboard going downhill and you get the wobbles? And it's really hard to recover from the wobbles, and you have that thought where you're like, am I going to crack my skull, break my leg, or can I recover from this? Nobody ever recovers from the wobble. You bail. That's how you have to just let it go. Does it kind of feel like I look around and I see so many things happening in the world and the way the conversation is getting more and more intense to the point where literally people have even come to me and be like, man, I just feel like we're headed to a civil war. I'm like, do you know how crazy that sounds? We live in like the most affluent society on planet Earth, the most affluent culture on planet Earth, and we got the skateboard wobbles. I feel like we've got conversations we can't have at a dinner table or a breakfast table or it could end your conversation. You can't speak your mind about things that you believe or for fear that people will respond differently to the way that you are. You can't talk about who you vote or you can lose family members. We live in a world that's so full of the tension of all that. And yet at the exact same time, there's real active darkness going on planet Earth. Like the darkness can look like the noise in the conversation, and the darkness can actually be the injustices that are happening all over the planet, whether it's what's going on in Brazil, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Yemen. You don't have to look far. And to me, what I always tell my kids, what I've always been told by mentors is that when things are off track, go back to the beginning. We know this as human beings. If you're trying to screw a bottle cap onto a bottle and you're off and the threads are off, you don't just keep grinding it, because then what happens? You can't undo it, right? If you're building something or if you're building IKEA furniture, may God have mercy on your soul. If you're building IKEA furniture and you're putting that screw in there, you can't force it. You just have to back it out and go back to the beginning. If your marriage feels like it's off kilter and something is just working against you, it's not about forcing it. It's about going, hey, we just have to step back and go back to the beginning. Ever have a marriage therapist be like, hey, why did you guys fall in love? They're not saying that there's no love visible. They're saying, let's go back to the start. So what I thought we could do is let's just agree here that the world has the wobbles. Can we agree with that? Can we agree that, and I'm not saying the world, in a spiritual sense, I'm literally like San Diego, LA, California, America, planet Earth. We got the wobbles as human beings. So I want to go back to the beginning. Could we do that? Let's just imagine that we're the G8 summit. We're going to take it all the way back to the start. Will you go with me to Genesis chapter 1? When I say the beginning, you're like, oh, he really meant the actual beginning. I'm just going to read these first few verses of Genesis chapter 1. I got to start by saying that Genesis chapter 1 is not a scientific document, although there is scientific evidence in it. Genesis chapter 1 in the Hebrew scriptures, in Eastern literature, it's a poetic visual language. You have to read this like a graphic novel. And everything in this passage is something. Go with me here. Genesis chapter 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light. Everybody say that with me. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And he separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. I think I would just want to start there because those are literally the first 4 verses of this, what we know as the scriptures. And there's this description that's beautiful. The writer of Genesis is essentially saying that God said, "Let there be light." Now, the writer could have used any tool. You're the God of the universe. Literally, matter comes out of your hands. You're the God of the universe. You can use anything that you want. There is no person to put together an alphabet, but it says that God said. Really? Well, what language did he say it in? There's no language. There's no alphabet. There's no humans. We're a little non-specific here because it says that it was formless and empty, except that the darkness was over the surface of the deep. So there's a surface there. Surface of something. It's a little non-specific, but he's very specific about this. He spoke. That God spoke. There's a powerful thing here of this metaphor that if the God of the universe brings heaven and earth and creates universes with his words, he's communicating to you and me that we have that same power. There's a lot of things that God can do we can't do. Is that true? A lot of things that God has the ability to do, like create life, that we can't do. But we can speak. We can say words. So God used something that we can do to make a universe. See, what's beautiful about this is that it's a reminder to you and me that to start at the very beginning, we have to focus first on what God used to describe to us that the most powerful thing that you and I can do is use language. You can put human beings anywhere on planet Earth. They will find a way to communicate, yeah? Kids, you don't have to teach kids to talk. You have to teach kids the language you're speaking. I remember thinking when I had a child, I was like, this is too much power for me. I don't know if I can be trusted with this, because I could teach my kid like a made-up language. Wouldn't that be insane? I literally was like, I'm calling this a cup. I could call it whatever I wanted, and her whole life she would think that. Like, imagine how much responsibility it is to have a kid, because I think I'm a pretty, average person, but, man, there's some more twisted people than me. I almost taught my kid a fresh language. Almost kicked one off. We're going to find a way to speak words. What the scriptures are describing to us is that your words and my words, we can create universes. We can create light or darkness with the words that we speak. You and I have this, it's really interesting, as human beings when they do studies on people. Did you know that the average person has a positive bias in the way that they self-report their ability to communicate? All of us do. About 86% of people consider themselves good communicators. What that means is if Derek was saying something to me, he would write down his intention. I would write down what I think his intention was from it, and then they would match. 87% of people say they make it. When they're independently studied, they find 11% of people have the ability to do that. That means that the majority of us are walking around here blind to the fact that we actually can't get our intentions into the other person's head with the words that we speak. Because we're careless with our words, because we're uncareful with our words, because we're undisciplined with our words. The other thing that's really amazing, you know what's also crazy about language is, have you ever had somebody, you ever been angry? You ever been really peeved? And someone's like, get it out. You ever had that person? Like, say, come on. And then you get somebody kind of fired up and it's kind of fun to get them going and you just like, oh, say it. You know what happens when you speak angry words? It actually reduces the blood flow to the cognitive processing parts of your brain. And it gives you a false sense of rightness. So literally in the words that you speak, you're affecting the blood flow of your brain, how you're saying it, what you're saying. When you're angry and when you're frustrated, you go from frontal cortex. Everybody just put your hand on your frontal cortex. This is your frontal cortex, okay? This is your processing center. This is what keeps you from being an animal. You and a lion, the only difference between you and a lion and your brain is your frontal cortex, your ability to understand the words I'm communicating. When you speak anger, when you get upset, when you get in a fight, when we rage, when you say horrible things or when you say mad things or you try to just articulate how you're feeling and you get upset, you lose all blood flow to the cortex and it goes right to the amygdala in the center, which is just emotion. Ever had somebody come up to you and say, I know I said that, but I said a lot of things I didn't mean? You ever had somebody say that? That's actually true. Because they didn't mean it because their thinking, processing part of their brain was shut off. It literally was like downshifted. Anybody here married? Okay, I got a tepid. Anybody here married? Okay. Anybody here single? If you're single, raise your hand and look around. Keep your hand up high. You got to look around. If you're married, you know what it's like, or if you were married, you know what it's like to have a conversation that goes nowhere. And it goes nowhere loud sometimes. Anybody ever had that? You're more intense about it, and it's like, and then it gets in, then it's you like, all that's happening, and the processing part of your brain is shutting down and going to the middle. God uses his words to create the universe and says you and I can create light or darkness with the words we speak. There's a process called compassionate communication. Anyone heard of this? There are 3 rules to compassionate communication. It's a practice. This is a freebie, and then I'm going to jump to the next part of this verse, okay? If anybody ever has a conversation at work or a conversation in your intimate relationship, and it has a tendency to get intense, what's happening to our brains is that we're actually reacting to what the person is saying, not the material of the conversation or what the person even means. So the way to do this, this was born in like the 1970s and 80s, and then it got lost. We're in the wobbles. So can you imagine how amazing it would be if you had a super, super liberal person over here and a super, super MAGA Trumper over here, and they utilized compassionate communication so they could actually empathetically hear what the other person was saying? I was working on this project, and this guy was describing conservative people. I grew up in Ohio in a Catholic family. I know conservative people. He was describing them like racist bullies, and that was their beliefs. And I didn't correct him. I just got really, really sad because I thought that's what he thinks about the family that I know. But what can actually happen is when you find yourself in those tense conversations, there are 3 rules. The first one is relax. Everybody take a super deep breath. We're just going to try it. Everyone take a deep breath. First thing you do is relax. The next thing you do is you only have 30 seconds to speak. When a person has a timer when they speak, like the timer that I'm looking at right now, they choose their words very carefully. When you're in a frustrating conversation or when you're in a debate, you want that thing to go until you are clear, till that person gets you. And at that level, they ain't gonna get you. Nobody's getting you. You just go, this person has 30 seconds to speak. And when they speak really slowly. If anything ever happens in your life that gets really intense or gets frustrated, the faster you talk, the less likely your brain will process the words that we're speaking. And even less likely the person will actually understand what you're saying. We have an opportunity to relax, give a 30-second timer, and speak really, really slowly. That's my free one for today. You know how I know that words matter to you? Anybody ever have somebody call you a bad nickname growing up? Anybody ever have a bully say things to you? Anybody ever have a negative voice in your life say something to you? It might be 10, 15, 20 years later. Can you remember that? If you can't, just nod your head so I know that's you. Yeah, like our words can create darkness. Or anybody ever have somebody that like said something to you? Maybe you were a kid, and to this day, it's almost like it buoys and you could put a smile on your face at what they said to you? Anybody have anybody in your life, at any point in your life, that said something? Maybe it was a small compliment or a small thought. Anybody ever have that? If you do, just like nod your head so I know that that's you. You're there. When I was 12 years old, my Uncle Cliff, who was a cowboy, also an insurance salesman, I found that out later, but I thought he was a cowboy because he had a ranch and a couple hundred cattle. And my Uncle Cliff used to watch me because I would read the newspaper in the morning. I was 12 years old, and he used to go, this kid's going to be somebody. I don't know what it is, but he's going to be somebody. At 12 years old, that lodged like a bullet in my chest. I'm going to be somebody. And maybe functionally or dysfunctionally, man, I walked through my 20s like Derek knew me when I was 23. I'm going to be somebody. Hey, what's up? I'm Hank. I'm going to be somebody. Not because I'm cool, not because I'm smart, not for any other reason except the coolest guy I know said I'm going to be somebody. See, we have the capacity to create light or darkness with the words that we speak. We have to be most careful about 2 things, about the words we say to other people and the words we say to ourselves. You have the capacity to create light or darkness inside your own self by the words you say to yourself. I heard a friend last night tell me, he said, worry and complaining is like praying to the devil. Our ability to actually speak about ourselves is our thoughts. Now, your thoughts are not your first thought. Those things that are running through your mind, those are things that are happening to you. What you hold on to and what you repeat back, those are the words you say to yourself. Things you say to yourself about your body image. Things you say to yourself about your future. Things you say to yourself about your spouse. Things you say to yourself about your past. These are all things that either have the ability to create light or darkness, and the scriptures are saying, make them good. Make them good. First thing God does is he speaks and he uses words and he says, let there be light. There's another word there. By the way, I read the scriptures really slowly. When I was a kid, I read them really fast. When I first found God, I started reading through the Bible. I read through it 13 times in 4 years. Now I can't get through Genesis. I don't know if you've noticed, okay? Because every single word carries so much impact and so much power. It says the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. The Spirit of God was hovering over the water. And God said, here it is, let there be light. You know what's interesting is the God of the universe who created this matter uses a phrase, let there be. It feels a little passive for me. If I was God, which thank him, I'm not, I might be like, light. I might be like, it's a command or a demand, but he uses the phrase, let there be, as if he's allowing something that already wanted to come forward. If you were the God of the universe and you had unlimited power, you're timeless, you were the ultimate being, wouldn't you be a little more forceful with your words? But he just says, hey, let there be light, like he's letting it out. There's an elegance to the way that God brought light into the earth, light into the world, that the writer of Genesis is making sure we don't miss. I had a friend who has toxic hustle vibes. You ever met that person? They're just like, man, we're making it happen. We're gonna make it happen. We're talking about like an anxious productivity. Whatever darkness touched him when he was young, he's projected that into productivity, and he's going to make it. He's going to create it. He's going to force it and bend the universe to his will. You know this crowd? Yeah, they burn out. And I have this other friend who's said that an architect friend of his said he walks into every building and says, I wonder what this building wants to be. That my job as a builder, my job as an architect, our job as human beings is to ask, I wonder what this wants to be. God is creating the whole universe, and he says, yeah, let there be light. You can join this too. There's an elegance and a flow to that that's not a forcing, but it's actually a forming. Like I would walk into this building and be like, what does this building want to be? I know you're in the middle of renovating and figuring out. You got to keep the tsunami horns, though. Those things are amazing. The tsunami sirens, you got to at least, it's got to be like a trophy. Dip that sucker in gold. That should be, if there's a tsunami, we're going to know first here at Makers, okay? But he said even as a parent, he said he looks at his kids when they're young. He looks at his kids as they grew up and go, I wonder what they want to be. How can I allow what's happening into the world? You and I are being invited by the God of the universe to say, man, what about you and your career? What if you and your career literally had coffee together once a month and just said, what do we want to be? What do we want to allow in our life? Trapeze artists have the craziest job. If you think, I have a friend who I find out later, we work together, we manage artists together. I find out later that she's a trained trapeze artist. Anybody here a trained trapeze artist? Yeah, she's the first one I met. She had a trapeze setup in her backyard because her mom was super into the circus. I was like, how I have circus people working in my office. I had no idea. She starts talking about being a trapeze artist, and the beginning of the first time ever, you have to let go with both hands. So you can throw with a monkey bar. Monkey bars, that's hand by hand, right? You learn that one quick, one hand at a time. A trapeze artist has to let go with both hands. You are suspended in the air, and she said, when you let go with both hands for the first time, you have to trust that you've done all the work. And I was like, man, I say that a lot at work. That will preach. Man, I was like, you know what else that's like? That's like God creating the world, and you and I are creating our careers. We're creating our households. We're creating everything. We're not here to force it. We're here to say, what am I letting into my household? I'm going to let love into my household. I'm going to let joy into my household. I don't know about you, but I'm going to let creativity into my household. I want my kids to think that anything is possible. Well, my daughter painted this rock at school, and I set it right outside our front door, and we called it the Rock of Possibility. And every day on her way to school, I made her tap it and say, anything is possible. So I got this little 4-year-old walking out, just tapping a rock, being like, anything is possible. And if she missed it, I made her walk back up the stairs. You tapped the Rock of Possibility, because I'm going to let possibility of the God that can create the universe with his words. He can pretty much do anything we can imagine. The invitation for us is for us to use our words to create light or darkness, but make them good. The invitation for us is that we have the opportunity to allow these things into our life. And then the last thing he says in this verse is he says, let there be, what's the word? Light. Let there be light. The first recorded words from God is a command to be light. The command was not let there be. That's him like allowing it. And then he's like, no, you be light. If we are ever, you and me, confused about how we should behave on planet Earth. Anybody ever get into a disorienting scenario in your life? Anybody ever have like a disorienting battle fight in your marriage? I've been talking about a lot of battles. I love my wife. We have an amazing life. We have an amazing household. She's watching on the live stream. I love you. We are an animated couple, okay? But have you ever had something that kind of got disorienting? I was a homeschooled kid from Ohio who became a pastor in Los Angeles for 10 years, and then I work in the entertainment industry. You could take all three of those seasons of my life and say, man, I've had moments where I've been disoriented. I work in a lot of hip-hop music, and I grew up listening to country. You can imagine there's a lot of conversations that are disorienting to me. I don't know what is going on, a lot of new environments. When you're in a new environment, when you're in a stressful environment, when you're in an unpredictable environment, and you're not sure what to do, the scriptures are super clear. Be light. If you're in a conversation or a relationship, man, the older I get, I turned 40 and like everything kind of split. I had my boss text me and he said, hey, congratulations on being 40. He said, you can see the whole field. And I was like, yeah, you can see back too. You look back on the people who hurt you. Anybody here ever had somebody hurt you? Just give me a mm-hmm. You ever hurt somebody? You got any relationships that are stressed or that they're tense or that are injured or wounded? Got any awkward things in your life? Any awkward relationships with any people? And you have a conversation where you're like, there's literally nothing in the scriptures. There's no advice. There's no TikTok philosopher who can tell me exactly how to handle this situation. The scriptures are saying, be light. The question to ask yourself as you go into a confusing conversation or as you enter into a dialogue with a person that you have conflict with, or you know you have something against and they have something against you, you just take a deep breath, speak slowly. I'm going to be light. If you're wondering what words to say to yourself today, this Sunday, this conversation, be light. Say it to yourself before you walk into rooms, before you walk into a conference room, before you walk into a meeting. I'm going to be light. You got a chance to do that the minute this service is over. You can grab your phone and you can be like, man, I'm going to use my words to create a universe of light to somebody. I'm going to text some people some amazing things. You know, I've never once gotten a response of a text message where I was just trying to be light to somebody. I never once got it. Well, that was weird. Wish you hadn't sent that text. Man, I don't need this today. So I just get my phone out and I'll rip it off and just say, hey, I just want to say how grateful I am for you, how kind you are to people. To my single friends, you're a catch. I'm praying for your wife wherever she is in the world. I've never once gotten a text message like, man, I didn't need that today. It's Sunday. I don't need that kind of light, kind of positivity. Get that out of me. But my invitation to you and me is we get a chance to be light. In the chaos of everything that's going on in the world and the society that has the wobbles right now, all I want to do is I want to look at people and say, be light. You can hold your convictions. You can hold your beliefs. You can go through all the things that hurt you. You're not ignoring anything, but you can stand up tall and you can be light. I'm going to have the band come up and close us out this morning, but I just want to end with this thought, that every single one of us has an opportunity at every single living moment in our life to bring light or darkness with our energy and with the words that we speak. Inside of all of us, you have the capacity with every moment that you're alive. You have the capacity to bring light or darkness even into your own self. In the last 2 years, 3, I've lost some really close people to me. They have passed away tragically, they have passed away slowly, or they have passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And it's brought me to this singular conclusion. Maybe that's part of me getting older too, is that being alive is amazing. Being alive is incredible. And guess what? We can't reverse it. When we stop being alive, we can't like pack our cells back into our body to like open it up. This is it. This, on this planet, in this life, this is it. These breaths you're taking, these beating of your heart. So God created the whole universe with his words, gave us that power, and then said, be light. My invitation to you this morning is that when you walk out of this door, when you talk to yourself in your own car, when you look at yourself on Tuesday morning and on Monday morning, take a deep breath and be like, Mama, be light. I'm gonna be light to my kids. I'm gonna be light to my spouse. I'm gonna be light to that guy who's a jerk to me at work. I'm gonna be light to that person that I cannot stand, that I avoid at every level. I'm just gonna walk out and say, hey, I can be light. Because you know what's interesting about light is there's a passage of scripture where it says, the light has come and the darkness has not overtaken it. You ever have an awkward conversation with somebody where it's like you say something and they say something weird that you're like trying not to be triggered by, and then you kind of move on? You know, the nice thing about being light is you just go, hey, good morning to you. You're amazing. I don't even need them to respond. The people who are mixy or confusing, there could be people in your life that you see at grocery stores, people you see at Walmart, people you see at Target, people you see on the street. You just be light. Our entire role is that we would light and allow that light to come forward. That you here this morning, you have the chance inside your own system. Man, you know how many of us came in here? I don't know about you, but I was sitting over there trying to hold back the Sunday scaries. Anybody have that going on? Like, I got a lot of work going on. I got a lot of things to do. I got a lot of stressful things that can come flying into my head. I just take a deep breath and I'm like, Mama, be light. I send that crazy text message to myself. Hank, you got this? You're a catch. Your wife is so lucky. Like, you got to say that stuff to yourself to be light, because your words either create a universe of light in you or they create a heaviness. I want all the blood flow to my frontal cortex so that I can create the best life possible. So I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to be light. Stand with me. I'm going to pray with you. God, thank you so much that in the very first words of the very first book of the very first chapters of Scripture, you make it so clear that the world was formless and there was a void, and you used words to bring light. So God, I ask that in this room, I pray for every marriage in this room, that you, God, would use words and equip us with the words to bring light. I pray for the parents that are struggling in this room. The parents who have going back and forth with adult children, going back and forth with little children, back and forth with teachers, back and forth with exes, with co-parents. God, that you would equip us all to be light. God, I pray for all the teachers in this room. I pray for the ones that take care of our kids every single day. I pray that they would have within them the words to be light to themselves and to our kids. Pray for the teachers of this city. Pray for the teachers of the state of California. God, that they could be light. God, I pray for all those kids right now who have adult parents they're helping navigate. Aging parents is something no one wrote a manual for. And God, I pray that you'd help them to be light. In this room, God, I pray that there would be 500 little light bursts that would leave us. Give us the words to speak. Give us the universes to create. God, as your word said, let it be. Let there be light. We pray this in Jesus' name.